First night, go ahead.
Amar Rabbi Abahu, Amar Rabbi Elazar, Talmidei Chachamim Ein Ur Shel Gehinnim Sheilatas Bohen. Rabbi Abahu said, Rabbi Elazar said that Talmidei Chachamim, the fire of Gehinnim does not rule over Torah scholars. Kal v'chomer me salamandra. This is known through Kal v'chomer from the salamandra. This salamandra is a beast created through from a fire, left burning for 7 years in one place without interruption. That's what Rashi said. Uma salamandra sheteledes eishi. If in the case of a salamandra, which is only the offspring of fire, hasach midama ein ur sheiletes boy. Fire does not rule over one who smears himself with its blood. Talmidei Chachamim, in the case of Torah scholars, shekol gufon eish, whose entire bodies are of fire. One who studies Torah in depth is transformed until he himself burns with an inner fire. Simar Shah. Dichsiv halay chay devari ka'eish num Hashem, as it is written, are not my words mighty as fire, says Hashem. All the more so. So more so that the fire of Gehinnim doesn't shalat us b'hen. Amar Reish Lakish, Ein ur shel Gehinnim shalates b'foishei Yisrael. The fire of Gehinnim does not rule over the sinners of Israel. Kal v'chomer mizbach hazav. Kal v'chomer from the golden altar. Ma mizbach hazav, in the case of the golden altar, she'eina levela k'oini dinar zav, which has no more than a thickness of the golden dinar. A golden dinar. Kamash shanim ein ha'ur sheilates, but still yet for many years the fire doesn't rule over it. This was a very thin coating and should have worn away over years of use. The fact that it did not constituted a miracle. So Paisha Yisrael, the sinners of Israel, shemelein mitzvahs krimain, who are full of mitzvahs, as is a pomegranate's full seeds. Tichsiv kefelach harimain rakasech, like a section of a pomegranate is your temples. We expound, al tikei rakasech ela reikanin shabach. Don't read it as your temples, rakasech, rather the empty ones, reikanin shabach. Al achas kama v'chama, all the more so. Hadran lach chaymer b'kaidish uslika la masechas chagiga. Hadran lach masechas chagiga v'hadrach alon. Daiton alach masechas chagiga v'daitach alon. La nis nesheminach masechas chagiga v'la sis nesheminan. La be'olam ha'dain v'la be'olam ha'dasei. Hadran alach masechas chagiga v'hadrach alon. Daton alach masechas chagiga v'datach alon. La nis nesheminach masechas chagiga v'la sis nesheminan. La be'olam ha'dain v'la be'olam ha'dasei. Hadran alach masechas chagiga v'hadrach alon. Daton alach masechas chagiga v'datach alon. La nis nesheminach masechas chagiga v'la sis nesheminan. La be'olam ha'dain v'la be'olam ha'dasei. Chanina bar Papa, Rami bar Papa, Nachman bar Papa, Achai bar Papa, Abba Mori bar Papa, Rafram bar Papa, Rachish bar Papa, Sorcha bar Papa, Ada bar Papa, Daru bar Papa. Arevno Adonai Eloheinu es divrei Yisrael befinu vefifi ha'isamacha beis Yisrael. B'nihi akelanu anachnu v'tzeh etzoinu. Etzoinu v'tzeh amacha beis Yisrael. Chudanu yede eishemecha v'reim edei seirasecha lishma. Yai v'ayitecha gemeni mitzvayzecha ki le'elam hiri. Yehi li b'samim b'chogecha le'ma'an eloi eveish. Le'elam eloi eshkach b'kudecha ki v'mechi yisani. Baruch ato Adonai elam edei chogecha. Amen, 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 sela v'ed. V'yidim anachnu lefanecha Adonai Eloheinu v'Elokei Aviseinu. Shesamtach alkeinu miyoshvei beis hamidrash, v'lo yisamtach alkeinu miyoshvei granais. She'anu mashkimim v'heima mashkimim. Anu mashkimim l'divrei Torah v'heima mashkimim l'dvarim b'teirim. Anu amedim v'heima amedim. Anu amedim u'mekablim zachar v'heima amedim v'einam mekablim zachar. Anu ratzim v'heim ratzim. Anu ratzim l'chayei ha'elam haba v'heim ratzim l'vir shachas. Shene'emar be'ado Elohim tevidim l'vir shachas. Ana sheidami mumirma لا يخطو يميم وأن يفتح بخ יהי רצון מלפניך, יהי רצון לפניך אדוני, אלוהי כשם שעזרתני לסיים מסכת חגיגה, כן תעזרני להשכיל מסכתות וספרים אחרים ולסיימם, ללמוד וללמד לשמור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, וזכות כל התנאים והאמוראים ותלמידי חכמים יעמוד לי ולזרעי, שלא יסמו שהתורה מפי ומפי זרעי וזרע זרעי עד עולם, ותזכיים בי ויסלחך תנחה עסך, ושוח בך תשמר עליך, והקיצצה היא ששיחך, כי בי ירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים, אורך ימים ומינה ושמאלה, אשר בכבוד, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו והשלום.
חדש טוב.
Iskada, Iskada, Shishimi, ותברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתקיימם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי הקדושה
אמן.
לעילה מן כל ברכת ושירת ובשבחת ונחמת דעם ירנה בעלמה ואמרו אמן. על ישראל ועל רבנן ועל תלמידיהם ועל כל תלמידיהם ועל כל מוני דעסקין בעירייסא די ועשרה הדין ודי וכל עשר ועשר יהי להינה ולכינה שלום רבה חינה וחיסה ורחמין וחיינה ריחינה ומזוינה רביחה וברכנה מן קדם אבוהינה וישמעיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמעיה וחיים טובים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. ויעשה שלום ממנו והוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
So they have a picture for Charles tonight.
Very nice.
Okay, we're going to start with Hilchos beis habechira.
Okay, let me hold it.
Hold on a second, the rabbi is here. Anybody read?
Oh, baby. We're talking. What this is serious stuff over here. We're not playing games over here.
Page I believe one day.
I didn't have a moment to look. We don't have people. It's a shame next week I'll have an answer. I hope.
No, habechira.
That's progress.
That's a real cut, Scott.
It is?
That's
Big
the
one.
Right.
We're middle of Chamishi.
All right.
Are we?
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot.
Halt.
Oh yeah. No, we finished. Last week.
No.
No, you're right. Good base.
Hey, halacha yud beis.
Good base.
Hey,
Diana.
halacha yud beis. Pastor.
Yeah, put it up. Good base. Oh,
Thursday
page 20.
night.
The next one after you had Shishi is Shabbos. The next one after Thursday night is going to be Shabbos.
Small with mouthful. All right.
Halacha yud beis. What? Beis Zayin.
All right. Okay, Mahal Perik Hey Halach Yud Beis. Halach Yud Beis and onwards, the Rambam is going to detail the dimensions, the more detailed dimensions of the Beis Hamikdash. Till now, we'll be giving more general dimensions, the dimensions of the rabbi, and the size, the length, and the width of the Kodesh and the Azariah. Now, the Rambam is going to go into detail and break down that list. How do we get to the total number of 135 lengthwise and widthwise? as we're going to see in the following halachas. Halachah beis the Rambam Eirech Azara mit Amayne of the Mizrach. The length of the Azar from west to east, meaning the space of the Mikdash and the Ezes Yisrael and the Ezes Kainim and the Ezes Nashim was 187 amas, all the way from west to east. And this is how we tally to that number. As follows: from the western wall, from the Kaisel Maravi to the actual wall of the structure of the Beis Hamikdash, we have 11 amas. Later, the entire length of the Heichel is 100 amas. Between the Ulam and the Mizbeach is 22. The Mizbeach and the Mizbeach itself is 32. And the place where the Kohanim were allowed to walk, that is the Ezras Kohanim, Achas Esri Amma was 11 amas. Now Yisrael was allowed to enter the Ezras Kohanim for certain under certain conditions. Yisrael, the width of the area that the Yisraelim, a regular Yisrael could walk, and non Kohen Wunika as Yisrael, Achas Esri Amma is 11 amas. Hopefully, we'll cap. Oh, very good. So far, so good.
177.
Yeah, we're almost there. 187. Missed 10. 187. As a Yisrael, go to the beginning. Fine. Begin with Rechav HaZoreh.
Plus 111 plus 22 is 133.
Right.
156.
11 Ezras Kohanim, 11 Ezras Yisrael.
It's Perek Hey, Halacha Yud Beis. We just finished Halacha Yud Beis. Perek Hey.
187.
Yisrael Ein Beis. No, half 9 Beis. With Gimel. V'rechav ha'azarim and itzaf from the Darim. What about from north to south? Meo shloishim v'chamish is 135. As follows.
Nun Beis in that book.
Right, it's a different cave this one. The case let's find out Beis Hamikdash Bachayim from the northern wall to the Beis Hamikdash Bachayim. The Rambam will explain what this is in a moment. Shmeina Ames is the length of 8 ames. Beis Hamikdash Bachayim, the Beis Hamikdash Bachayim itself is 12 Amma v'mechza, 12.5 ames. Shom Teilin u'mafshitin es hakachim. In the Beis Hamikdash Bachayim they had nanasim. Nanas is a midget. They had small poles where they would hang up the karbanis and skin them. U'betzidon, working our way down, we have into Yadal Mekem HaShulchan Shmeina Ames tables. The length of that area of the Azara took up 8 ames. Big discussion. What was the formation of the tables? Were the tables placed one next to each other, going all the way down to 8 ames, or were they spread around within that 8 ames area? Had tables made of marble on which the cut up pieces of the carbones were placed. They would rinse down the pieces before they would cook them. Again, there were 8 tables. Further down, making our way down from north to south, we have Makem HaTabois, the rings on the floor, Esrim v'arba Amma, 24 amas. V'sham sheichtem as HaKachrim, that's where they would shech the karbonis. Tezvav, bein Makem HaTabois, the karbonis that shechitas matzafim. Bein Makem HaTabois v'hamizbeach shmeinu amis. From between the tabois to the actual wall, the northern wall of the mizbeach, we have 8 amas. V'hamizbeach shloishim mishtayim, the mizbeach itself was 32. V'kevesh shloishim, the length, the base of the ramp is 30. From the bottom of the ramp to the southern wall, we have 12.5. The case of Tzveini Shel Azara. So says the Rambam from the northern wall of the Azara, Ad Kesel HaMizbeach, until going all the way south to the wall, the northern wall of the Mizbeach, Shureichav Shishim v'mechza, which is 60.5 amas. Ukenegdoi. And within that area, perpendicular to it, Mikaisel ha'ulam ad kaisel mizrachi shel Azara. Shu'erech shisha v'shivim, from the wall of the ulam to the wall of the Azara, is a total of 76 amas. Says Rambam Mitezayin, continuing the sentence, Kol hamaruba hazeh, this entire squared area, hu hanikrat tzafin. That is a halachic area of tzafin, of north. That is a location, the kachi kachrim, specific types of carbonis had to be shechted dafka in that area. There were 8 lishkas, rooms in the Ezes Yisrael.
Lishkas is an office.
Lishka.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a room that
So you call it, because you've been calling it room, it's really like an office.
Chambers.
Chamber.
Good.
Chambers.
Chambers. Sounds more official. There were 8 chambers. There were in the Eretz Yisrael, Shalosh B'Tzafon v'Shalosh B'Darim, 3 in the north and 3 in the south. Should be shake. Shabbadorim, the ones in the south was Lishkas HaMelech, the chamber of the salt. Lishkas HaParva, was a parva, Nishkin Fleischik, Nishkin Milk, wasn't Lishkas HaParva. We'll see in the moment what these chambers were used for. And Lishkas HaMadichim, we'll get to it in a second, he'll explain. Lishkas HaMadichim explains the Rambam, Lishkas HaMelech, what is it? Chamber of the salt, Shom, Neis Nemechel, carbon. But Pashas, they would keep the salt for the carbonis in that room, in that chamber. Lishkas HaParva, says the Rambam, Shom Melchin Eiris HaKachim, Parva Moshin Para. They would keep the hides of the animals in that room, and they would tan the hides of the animals in that room. Very interesting discussion about the name. Nochmal. They would process them. They would process them. Yeah, part of the process to salt them.
What do you use the hides for?
The Kehanim, whatever they wanted. It was a personal. The Eiris belonged to the Kehanim. His hides would belong to the Kehanim, wherever they wanted. Yeah. There's a big discussion in the Rishonim where the name Parva comes from. So we're familiar with the name Parva. So in the Bartanura writes that there was a Machashif, a Kirshuf Macher, whose name was Parva, Zan Nomen, and he dug a tunnel from Yerushalayim into the Har HaBayis to see the Avodah of the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippur. Azoi. And they found him dead right there. So they named the room after him, Lishkas HaParva. Some say the Rosh writes that he was a Yid, Smachashev was a Yid. So it's interesting, the guy left a legacy. Fine. But the Messiah that you can say, Mamet Schos, the Messiah Nefesh, to see the Avodah of the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippur. Fine. Val Gaga on the roof of the Lishkas beis HaParva, Hoysa beis Tevila, there was a mikveh, the Kohen Gadol Yom Kippurim. That was the first Tevila of the Kohen Gadol. There were 5 Tevilas that the Kohen Gadol did in that day. That was that location, meaning the mikveh on the southern side, on the top of the Lishkas beis HaParva is where the Kohen Gadol went to mikveh. Lishkas HaMadichim, and the third chamber, Sham Hoya Madichim Kirvei HaKachim, would rinse down the innards of the Karbanis, Misham Misiba Oil Lagag HaParva. And in that third chamber, there was a staircase that led to the mikveh on top of the beis HaParva.
So that Yom Kippur, everything was tummy.
Again?
When they found this dead body, everything was tummy.
That specific location could have been tummy.
That's where the mikveh was.
Aha, see, that's the tefillah. Okay. The 3 chambers in the north. Again, this is all within the 11 amma width of the Eretz Yisrael. So the chambers couldn't have been that wide. So the 3 chambers in the north were the Lishkas Hagazis, Lishkas Hagoyla, and Lishkas Ha'etz. Zaganamba, Lishkas Hagazis. What is Lishkas Hagazis? Everybody knows. Shabash Sanhedri Gedoyle Yeshavis. That is what the Sanhedrin sat. Lishkas Hagazis. Misham Yitzerol Yisrael. The Chetzi HaYakedesh, the Chetzi HaYachel. Half of it had the Kedusha of the Azara, and half didn't, because they sat down. So they were able to sit, being that it was within the half of that location that was not Mekudesh, it was not sanctified. It had 2 entrances or exits, one that opened into the Azara, one that opened to the Har HaBayis. Sanhedrin would sit in the half of that room that was Chayil. Lishkas Hagayla Sham Hoyaboy. There was a well, they would draw water with a bucket from that well, and they would, from that well, they would provide water, drinking water, for the purpose of drinking in the Azar. We had the Lishkas Ha'etz that was behind them. Vihi Hoysa Lishkas Kohen Gadol. Vihi Nikres Lishkas Palhedrin. Okay, that was the Lishka that the Kohen Gadol would stay during his week of preparation for the Veda of Yom Kippur. Parhedrin would be Pekidei HaMelech. The offices of the king. It's a word that comes from some Greek word. Parhedrin. Okay. Yeah. It would be his. Aha. Okay. The roof of all these Lishkas Hagazis, Lishkas Hagoyla, and Lishkas Ha'etz were all flat. Meaning, not all flat, they were all on the same level. Meaning one wasn't higher than the other. The two other lishkas and Eretz Yisrael. So we have the three from the north, the three on the north side of the Eretz Yisrael, and the three on the south side of Eretz Yisrael. We have another two, a total of 8. Achas mimin shar mizrachi, the lishkas pinchas hamalbush. One to the right of the person entering the Azor was called lishkas pinchas hamalbush. Va'achas mismoiloi, and one to the left, lishkas eisei chavitin, the lishka of those who would make the chavitin of the Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol would bring a mincha, half it in the morning, half in the afternoon. That is the location where it was prepared. The lishka with the kohen who was mamune for the begadim of the kohanim, the different clothes that the kohanim had, the clothes of the kohen gadol or the regular kohanim. The zui tzuras kol halishkis va'azare kula lefi midei seho, and we have the picture that the Rambam depicts the layout of the Kodesh and the different rooms and as Yisrael and as Nashim. Interesting to note that the menorahs isn't placed mitzvah from the dawn. Placed mizach ma'ariv. Okay. In this picture, is taka placed mitzvah from dawn. Over here, it's placed mizach ma'ariv. Fine. All right. Say the machnas nachta. Okay.
Yeah. Whatever it is, we'll say.
Okay.
We'll make it.
Fine.
Could you tell you that? Yeah, my is in the other room where it wasn't bothered. Which one is in?
Did you find out what I'm looking for?
I thought you said you find it. I said it's time that you decide you're doing it.
Okay. Fine.
Where's the place we're going?
We're gonna find out right now. We're starting the first one.
Mine Isha Kesider Neder.
Isha Kesider Neder. Oh, so 166. 166. You guys meet over there? You need one?
Yeah, page 166.
Okay.
Page
161. Done 161.
166.
First one.
166. Yeah, first one is 166. All right.
Backwards, yeah. Okay.
We're in the middle.
Okay.
How far we got?
Page 166.
So we'll go through the chutz, a couple of nekudas that the Alter will discuss in this maimer, and then we'll read a couple lines inside the maimer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we know the beginning of Pashas Matis discusses the nadarim, the vows that a man could take or a woman could take. And we know that there are specific rules regarding nadarim, regarding vows, if the woman were to be a minor, or if she were to be engaged, or married, or divorced from her husband, many different halachis. The theme of this maimer, the Alter Rebbe is going to discuss what is a vow, why the need for a vow, right? Why does a person have to vow? So, Chassidus, Alter Rebbe explains that our involvement with Gashmius, with the physical aspect of this world, is an imperative. It's required. Eibishter created the world, and he created Adam Barasa for us to involve ourselves with Gashmius and to elevate and to bring out the purpose of why it was created. Now, what happens if a person feels that he's going to involve himself with the belt, right? And he's going to feel dragged, he's going to feel pulled down by it. So he makes a neder. He feels that the world is too strong of an influence over him, so he decides to be abstinent. That is the concept of a neder. He doesn't want to involve himself with what Chassidus terms as the Avodas Habirurim, which is to bring out the potential of each physical aspect of this world. So he abstains from it. Now, that is the initial stage of Avodas Hashem. That is the first stage. When a person realizes that he has the koiches, that regardless of his standing in this world, he's able to interact with this world and not be affected by it because he has an neshama and he learns Torah and is mekayim mitzvahs. So the fact that he has a chelek elakami mal mamish and is connected to the Neisen HaTorah allows him to have an effect in this world and not to be nuspal, not to be affected from the world. But it's different levels in a person's maturity of Avodas Hashem. First, the person comes to the realization that he cannot, it's too much for him. Then he says, let me take a step back. And then he says, you know, that's not too much of a big deal. Welt isn't too much of hoo-ha. It's not as amazing as they say. Nothing to be nuspal about. And he realizes he doesn't need the nether to begin with. There's nothing to be nuspal. And he continues with his Avodas Hashem in a way that he involves himself with the world, not abstaining from the world. That's the theme that the Alter Rebbe will discuss in this moment. Let's begin. Isha kesider neder Hashem. To state a vow to the Eibishter, binureha, in his state of nairus, halachically that is from the age of 12 to 12 and a half. Isha sagt the Alter Rebbe, he Knesset Yisrael. The woman in this maimer is a reference to Knesset Yisrael, to Yidden. Mekeir kol neshamis, but it's a dag in Elikus where all the neshamis are sourced at. It's the highest level of the neshamis. L'chein, therefore, sagt Alter Rebbe, interesting Indian, time is Zakev Gadol. Isha, right? It's a Zakev Gadol. Why Shemeire? Because it's indicative that this Isha, this neshama, stems from a very high place. Yisrael, all b'machshava. They weren't just b'machshava; they were all b'machshava. It's a very high level. Hashem b'chachma yased aretz, right? So we have b'chachma. Through the sphere of chachma, they created this world. But on a higher level of Welt, you have all of b'machshava, the makir of the neshama of the Yidden. So in truth, the mahus of the Yid is higher than the level through which Eibusha created this world. So already from the beginning, the Alter Rebbe shows us that there's no reason why Yid could be affected from this world, could be affected from Welt. Because his mahus, his real existence, is a different existence than the world. It's much higher and elevated than the world. There's no reason to feel afraid from it. Okay, skip the brackets. Continue. Lachim. Oh, Nika Knesset Yisrael Isha. That's why Knesset Yisrael is termed a woman. On that day, Shichat Kumen Tikri Ishi, you will be my wife, says Eibishter. This is the Indian that the Isha, the Knesset Yisrael, how again Alter Rebbe uses very terse lashon, but the nekuda is that the level of the neshama as it is on the highest of levels is referred to as Isha. What's happens when Mashiach comes? Why not now? What is lacking now that we aren't on that level? The three stages, or three different types of geula. The first geula is revelation of chesed. Geula shnia, second geula b'schus Yitzchak, is a geula of Yitzchak. V'lachein lo heisa geula shlema. In the Maimon, the Rebbe explains because Yitzchak is the inyan of Gevuris, it's inyan of Tzimtzum, which didn't allow the Geula to be revealed in its fullest way from our perspective. So it wasn't a Geula Shlema. And Geula Shlishis is B'schus Yankiv, the merit of Yankiv Avinu. Shezehu inyan. Nochmal, skip the brackets over here. I think it goes to the end of the ois. Goes to the end of the ois, but the nekuda the Alter Rebbe he discusses that Yankiv is midas for emes. Titan emes to Yankiv. Not to say that Yitzchak is an emes, but the Ma'amad Yankiv Adam. What is this Indian of midas? What is the Indian of midah? The midah of Yankiv. Possibly goes on Langa Arichas over here. Okay, so we'll talk and continue through the brackets for a couple of lines. So the Alter Rebbe.
Where's the line? Where's the line start with? Where's the line start with?
Simchov Dalet.
He's got it right here. I got it, yeah.
It's all one Indian. But Shazel in Yemaim Zal Pasuk B'Holcha Amim Rabim Beis Alakei Yankiv. That we will, when Mashiach will come, we will refer to the Eibusha as the Eibusha of Yankiv. Like Avram Shekasav Boihar. Bahara Vayiroi. Like Yitzchak Shekasav Beisada Shno Yitzchak L'Such Basada. Like Yankiv Shekroi Bayis. Fine. Who beginnes Yankiv beginnes Bechir Shubiyafis. שהוא בכינס אמס, כדכסיב תיתן אמס ליענקב, והתוירה נקרס אמס, כדכסיב תוירס אמס, heiße befihu, Korev Hashem be'emes v'nemes el atayra. The Alter Rebbe is trying to bring out a point over here that the level of Yaakov represents a nakuda that goes through every sphere in Ruchnis, which is Torah, right? Because Eibusha created the world through Torah, and each level in Ruchnis, in Torah is tzamtzum through that level, further and further down until it comes onto this world. This is represented by the midah of Yaakov. This concept that in every level in Ruchnis, it's a nakuda that goes through, that travels to every level. Midas habechira, Midas Avram Yitzchak. Ein Midas Chas v'Shalom. Except Yaakov is unique. He's called Avram Yitzchak. The vowel of Avram and Yiro, which are represented by Avram and Yitzchak, are not emes. Why is Yaakov emes? How is he more emes than Avram and Yitzchak? So this graim, I think we should put a snach the dog from the end of the question. Okay, so when we're making our coffees, we can think about this in. Except this Yaakov is more emes. Fine. Okay, say that. Fine.
That's it? That's all?
He says this is a teaser.